So I want to start off by saying my apologies. I apologize. Lo siento. I don't know how you say that in other languages, but my apologies. This video, I got a lot going on right now, and so while I really have enjoyed YouTube, I like the medium. I'm on this 100 days of one video, 100 days, and so this is like day. What is this, day 19? I think this is day 18. So, and I thank you for some of the people that have kind of joined and subscribed, and people that have been watching. It's funny because there are certain people that used to jump on the streams like when I didn't post every day, but I think now they're just like, man, he's posting every day. I'll just catch up when I catch up to him. But I just want to apologize because I got a lot going on. And so because I said that I was going to post a video every day for 100 days. This video is my first time doing this, where I don't have a, well, let me just say what I've been doing. So I've been processing. I've been thinking about a lot that's happened. Like, you know how sometimes you just think about your life, right? And you think about what's going on. I tell this story a lot because it was funny when it happened. It was just wild when it happened. But years ago, before I was a pastor, I remember I was doing a concert. So I was in Baltimore I was a Christian rap artist named Voice at the time. And I was doing a concert in Baltimore. It was a small church. It was really hot in that joint, right? So this concert was in the summer, but it was so hot inside. It was like in July. It was so hot inside that it was cooler outside, even though it was July in the summer. So I go outside and I'm chilling, and I realize that the guy standing next to me is the lead pastor of the church. He's the lead pastor. And so I'm trying to like encourage. I'm like, man, sir, thank you. I was like, hey, as a young man going into ministry, what wisdom would you give me to prepare for ministry, right? And this is what he did. Okay, so I'm over here. I'm over like here over this side, right? I'm looking at him this way. And he just looked like this, as if I couldn't see his face directly, and it was also night. But I saw enough to know he went just like this. When I said, what would you, he was like, I said, what would you say to someone, a young man like me coming to ministry with wisdom? And he goes like this. And he said, pain. Pain. Nothing but pain. And I didn't expect that. So I just said, oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much, man, for your encouragement. Right? Because what I knew of pastoral ministry at that time was not that it was like pain. That's not how I would have described it. And nor would anyone that I knew was in ministry. At least that's not the impression that I got. That would have been 21 years ago, somewhere around there. 21, no, probably 2005. It's been 20 years ago now, that conversation. Fast forward 20 years, I'm a pastor for 17 years. And if I were giving the advice, if someone were asking me, what would you tell a young man who's coming into ministry? And while I experienced some real pain, I think people sometimes think that, this is where I saw why people push back against the woke agenda, the sort of the Marxist agenda, where it's all just top down sort of manipulation and stuff. I think people forget that everyone's a human being, whether they're a celebrity, whether they're a parent, whether they're a pastor. At the end of the day, we're just human beings. And we live in an era where we have a digital nervous system that's so connected to everything that we're just wired in such a way that we're not built to handle all of the information that we take in. And I think this is why I think stuff like anxiety is up. We live in a culture where there are more pills and more things to cure anxiety, depression, and loneliness, and yet we're 4 times more anxious and depressed than 100 years ago, right? I think part of it is just like we're not made to have this quasi omnipresence where we can be in a number of different places just by being on our phone. No wonder we doom scroll, because we can go anywhere in the world just on our phones. And so there's a lot of I just bit my tongue. There's a lot of mental stuff that you go through, right? So if I were to answer the question, what would you say to, if a young guy was asking me that, I would say, one of the things I would say would be learn the difference between discouragement and disappointment. Learn the difference, because I don't think a lot of believers notice that. We sometimes things overlap and we think they're just semantics, but I don't think they are. And I could be wrong, but this is how I process the two. I would tell anyone, a young man coming into ministry, that if you learn the difference between discouragement and disappointment, because you're going to experience both, but one is more dangerous than the other. So let me explain what I mean. Well, let me say this first. If you don't know the difference between the two, then you'll be confused. Just like people don't know the difference between conviction and condemnation, right? Conviction is a sadness that brings you to the Lord, like David in Psalm 51. Condemnation is a sadness that takes you away from him, like Judas. He confessed his sin and all of that, but he still unalived himself, right? I think faith and hope is another one where people just think they overlap. They're not the same thing. Faith is, I believe it's true. Hope is, I'm waiting for it because it's true. So faith, believe, hope, waits. Those are two different things. Discouragement and disappointment are two different things. Discouragement is essentially when you are reacting in a negative emotional capacity because you don't feel like you have any hope. You don't feel like there's any way out of it, and you're really discouraged. And as a believer, you won't find a credible translation that tells us that we should be discouraged, right? Discouragement is basically a psychological belief and an emotional response, a negative emotional response to like, I don't have any hope in this situation. That's what discouragement is. Disappointment is a temporary sadness at what's happening, but it doesn't go to the I don't have hope. I'm just disappointed. Doesn't really, there's no hope. Nothing can change. That's discouragement to me. Disappointment is I'm struggling, but there's hope. Let me tell you why I would tell a young pastor this. Because pastoral ministry in many ways has to do with you, especially if you labor in preaching and teaching like I do. I teach almost every Sunday. Pastoral ministry has to do with preaching and teaching, and you express a level of authority. And people, they listen to your teaching. If you're a decent teacher, they'll come, they like it, they're all of those things, right? But then sometimes those people that you've like been with, that you've walked with, that you've prayed for, that you've counseled, that you've been there on their wedding days and all that stuff, they will get offended at the same thing that they loved. I remember Jay-Z once said the same things that make you laugh, make you cry, right? People will get offended at you for a decision you made, a way you said something in a sermon, and they'll all of a sudden treat you as if that's the only way they can relate to you, completely forgetting you're a human being and completely forgetting that like you're just trying to be faithful to the Lord as well. You know, sometimes as a pastor, you care about people's souls more than they do. People just ain't tripping. They're up there evaluating if they like what you're saying or not. And you're up there saying, man, if you died, I don't know if I'd be confident that you're with the Lord. So you got to teach to always a broad audience of people. And what happens is you will inevitably run into people, some that you don't know that well, some that you felt like you did know well, who will see what you're saying and doing, take it negative, create narratives that don't necessarily represent what you said or did, but just how they feel. And then you'll be tempted to be discouraged or disappointed. Now, pastors that I know that have been discouraged, I've known of men who were so discouraged as they unalived themselves. They took their own situation that serious that they left their families and all of it. I know of men who have done this. And that's discouragement, when you feel like you have no hope. You feel like no one cares, nothing's going to change all of it. And that even in the worst sin, that doesn't happen in the Lord. I don't know if it were possible for Judas to go to the Lord, but he didn't feel like he could. That's what discouragement to me is more condemnation. I have no hope, right? And that's not really true, even though if you're in any position of authority, but because I'm a pastor, I'm talking about being a pastor, you're going to get people who went from, I love you, I'm so grateful for you, to like, I'm leaving the church because of you. It's so fascinating. And then it's all gets thrown under the guise of church hurt, as if like you're just going around offending people all the time. A lot of times, pastors, even in churches like mine, I only have a couple hundred people, you're not even in close enough proximity to offend some people, right? So you can be discouraged, and that can really take you down a negative hole. And then all of a sudden, now you're looking for people to encourage you. And when they don't, I've seen pastors be so extreme where they unalive, or they just crash out, disqualify themselves, commit adultery or whatever. I've seen it all, right? Disappointment, though, is when I'm genuinely sad at the circumstances, but there's hope. I have hope. I'm not going that way. I have hope, but I'm still sad. I'm genuinely disappointed that this person said this or that this happened, right? But that's a difference. So if I were telling someone coming into ministry, I would say, know the difference between the two of these, because I think discouragement is what the enemy will want you to think, so that you can just go down this rabbit trail of, after nobody loves me, all that type of stuff, right? Where disappointment is, I'm genuinely sad. I'm affected by these things. I'm a human being. I get affected by these things. I'm disappointed that this person is saying this. My feelings are hurt by this, but there's hope. It's not like the end of the world. It might be the end of that particular relationship. So my apologies. I didn't have anything supremely profound to say. I just wanted to say that. Keep the streak going, to be honest. But ultimately, I think those two distinctions are very important. And I'm grateful to the Lord that I know the difference between the two, because discouragement, I reject being discouraged, because it can take you to places of condemnation where I don't mind being disappointed. I don't mind the sadness, because we live in a fallen world. It's said that Jesus in Isaiah 53 is called a man of sorrows. It makes sense to me that the people who follow Jesus will experience some sorrow as well. All right. Grace and peace. We'll see you tomorrow for the next video.